all of you, and thanks so much for joining us. This is the 5th workshop in the MA Academic and Professional Development series that we started in the fall semester, covering all different topics, living up to the name of the series. Some of these are really academically focused. So we held one, for example, in the fall on choosing a thesis topic if you're in a program that has a thesis. This one is professional development. So it's about job search strategies. And when we were planning this workshop series over the course of the year, we always encourage students to start searching for a job or internship as soon as possible. But we know realistically that many people, this is your crunch time if you're graduating or if you're searching for a summer internship. So we really wanted to kick off the spring semester with this workshop so that you can start your job search or internship search feeling really confident. And with that said, welcome to, to the spring semester, and welcome to Columbia if any of you are starting for the first time, or welcome to New York if I know some students might have just arrived here and maybe were attending remotely for the first semester. But welcome to all of you, regardless of where you are. So I'll tell you a little bit, for those of you who aren't familiar with our office, who we are. So our office is called GSAS Compass, and my name is Rachel Bernard, and I am the director. And also on the screen is Francesca Finelli, the associate director.
Hello, good morning.
We are the career development office for all of the master's as well as PhD programs in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And we're really committed to working with all of you, a diverse group of students, in terms of where you're coming from, in terms of your career interests, in terms of the disciplines that you study. And really our ultimate goal is to empower you with the tools to pursue whatever career you want to, whether it's something that you chose to come to your master's program to further your career, or if you came to your master's program with the goal of pursuing a PhD, which would then ultimately lead to a career. Or many of you may have started your program with a couple goals in mind and changed your mind. So we're here to support you regardless of what your career goals are and regardless of what you want your next steps to be after you leave your program. So I will, as I'm going over the agenda here, a couple of things that I am going to ask you to do. So first of all, I mentioned using the chat, and it'd be great just to let us know and let one another know in the chat what industry you're pursuing, you're hoping to find a job in. So is it like at a museum? Is it in financial services? Is it in consulting? Is it at an NGO? Is it in human rights? Just to put in whatever informal terms you want, the kind of industry and kind of job that you might be interested in, just so we have a sense and so that you have a sense for who else is here. Simultaneously, I'm going to launch a poll. Oh, actually, I think Francesca will launch the poll. Zoom is always has surprises up its sleeve, but the poll is just to ask, are you able to launch it, Francesca?
Yes, I just launched it.
Okay,
and
so just asking for a little bit more information about who you are, where you're coming from, so a discipline, kind of where you are in your job search. So those are a couple things to be doing now as I'm just talking about the agenda. So, job search strategies, everybody knows to apply for a job. You look for the job, you apply, maybe you fill out an online application form, you submit a resume, a cover letter, you interview, you get an offer. Basic. But this workshop is about being a little bit more strategic about your job search. So what are some of our top tips? We'll talk not only about perfecting your materials, like your resume and your cover letter, but also the best places to find jobs, and also how to communicate with people during your job search. So how to communicate with your network, how to communicate with hiring managers, to try to be a little bit more strategic about your job or internship search. And I'll just say a brief note that this is about a job search. So, for those of you who are considering applying to PhD programs, obviously this won't be relevant for that. It's really about applying to jobs and really applying for jobs in the United States as well. We know that it's very culturally specific in what these materials look like and the norms around networking and communication. So this is really about searching for a job or internship in the US. And so thanks so much to all of you. I'm seeing lots of things in the chat, lots of diversity.
Yeah, but lots of I think government might be the one that I'm seeing most often.
Yeah, and human rights.
Yeah.
Think tanks, nonprofits, great.
Yeah, and can you see the polls, Rachel, or should I read out the results?
I can't see the polls.
Okay, so it looks like, I hope all of you can see them. And it looks like most of our students right now are in the social sciences, followed by humanity and then natural sciences and mathematics. Most students are in their second semester. There's no one in their first, and the second, so first to second semester, followed by third semester and beyond. So I think we have some grads here. And then which best describes your current situation? So most people are searching for a full-time position, followed by summer internships, and then some people are just planning ahead. So, you know, good mix of folks in the audience today.
Great. Yeah, and so, you know, our population is very diverse. You're all studying different things with different goals. And so this is going to be pretty general. So something you'll hear both me and Francesca say several times throughout is this is meant to be a broad general overview. And we encourage you after this one to attend other workshops that we offer. So we have a Job Search 360 series that will go into more depth on basically all of these topics starting next week, also actually at the same time on Friday mornings. So one workshop on resumes and cover letters, another workshop on networking and LinkedIn. So you can go into a lot more depth with those. And also we really encourage you to meet with us one-on-one and schedule an appointment to talk about your particular situation, your particular job search, to review your materials. So this will be broad, but generally broadly applicable. Okay, so let's dive in. How to search for a job. So as I said, you know, you all know some of the basics, but there are a few things you can do to be a little bit more strategic in your job search. So first, one question that we get all the time is when. When should I be applying for a job? And as you see on this slide, now. So start as soon as possible, especially most of you are searching, you know, hoping to be employed upon graduation coming up maybe in April or at the end of the summer. So this is really the time to be doing it. So it's great that you're here today. So more specifically, how do we break that down? So January, that's where we are now. If you haven't already, you should be taking this month to do some reflection and research. So some of you may still be exploring a little bit. I saw in the chat, some of you listed a few possible industries. So it sounds like you're still thinking about what would be the best fit for you and researching potential places to go. That's a great thing to be doing now in January. Also working on your materials. So along with your resume and cover letter, you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. So at the very least, that means even if you've been here for a few semesters already, make sure that you have on your LinkedIn profile that you are a master's student at Columbia in your program. That gives you access to the other Columbia networks on LinkedIn. It's also a great time to be doing informational interviews, and I'll talk a little bit more about what those are and how to do them, and to meet with a career advisor. So like I said, get that individualized approach to your job search and begin applying. So we get this question a lot is, you know, is January too early to start applying? And the answer is no. The hiring process can take a few months sometimes. So if you see positions, whether it's an internship or a full-time position that you're interested in, you should be applying now if you're planning on graduating this semester. It is true, you know, over the course of the interview process, you might find that they want someone to start sooner, but it's much better to be in that position and trying to negotiate a later start date than it is to be at graduation and to not have that offer. So you should begin applying this month in January. So next month, you should be continuing basically to do everything that you were doing in January. So continuing to research, network, and conduct informational interviews. You should be following up with your contacts, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, that if you do an informational interview in January, it doesn't mean you can like check it off your list and it's over. It means that's a contact, that's someone for you to maintain contact with moving forward. So make sure you're following up. Tailor your materials. So if you have kind of basic resume cover letter that you've worked out in January, the next step to take it to the next level, and Francesca's going to be talking about this later, is to tailor those materials to particular jobs and particular industries. By February, you should be applying in full force. People apply, it varies so much by person and by industry. I don't know, Francesca, how many jobs or internships would you say you hear of people applying to?
I mean, I've heard anywhere from like, I've only applied to maybe 3 or 4 to like 50, 60, hundreds.
Yeah.
So across the gamut, really.
Yeah. So so that means, you know, set a goal for yourself about how many positions you think you need to be applying to per week, and continue. And in February is really when you want to be doing that. Also, finally, in terms of doing something just one-on-one, just for yourself, do a mock interview. So schedule an appointment with our office to do a practice interview, so that if you have an interview coming up, or ideally before you have that interview scheduled, you've done the practice, you feel confident, you can schedule the interview and go into it with confidence. So meet with one of us to do that one-on-one interview. After that, March and April, apply. That's the main thing that you're going to be doing. Some of you might, you might be in a position where you've applied to 60 jobs and have only had a couple of interviews. Meet with us, even if you've met with us already, or if you haven't met with us yet. Maybe you need to refresh something on your resume. Maybe you've gotten some feedback and you'd like to talk through and process that feedback and reevaluate. So that's something in March and April to think about doing. If you're getting to the interview phase, but then not advancing, maybe do another mock interview. Maybe there's something, you need to kind of tweak the way you're interviewing. So it's really, don't just kind of bang your head against a wall. And it's important to be persistent, but also reevaluate as necessary. And also toward the end of the semester, we'll be having a salary negotiation workshop too. So just to prepare yourself in advance for any negotiation you might have if you have multiple offers, or even if you just have one offer. Finally, beyond May and beyond, in a perfect ideal world, you graduate, you have, I don't know, 2 weeks off to rest and rejuvenate, a month off, and then you start your great full-time position. It doesn't always work out that way. So if you find yourself that you graduate and don't have a position lined up, don't get discouraged. That's going to be like a primary message we're trying to send today about strategy, is people apply sometimes to many, 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 many jobs. And we're seeing this especially now, especially with COVID, with the current economy. Don't give up hope. Keep using our resources, keep using your network. You will find something, we promise. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So that's the basic timeline, with the primary message of, start early, start applying, keep applying. So another question that we get really frequently is, how should I be searching for jobs? A lot of people say, like, I heard you can only get a job through networking, and I don't have a network, I'm never going to get a job. Or I see, there are 50 jobs I want to apply to. Now I need to go meet somebody at all of these 50 companies. That is not true. The most strategic job search is one that is a multi-pronged approach. So you should be applying, if you see jobs in a job listed on Indeed, listed on LinkedIn that you're interested in, you should be cold applying to those. That's fine. You should be looking at company websites. So you should have a list of companies that you're interested in, or organizations. Be going to their websites frequently and apply directly through the website. You should also, of course, be networking. So that's one part of the approach. And we'll talk a little bit about how to mobilize your network, but networking is mostly about building community and finding information. But ideally, you'll have a few positions where you can get referrals from people in your network, and get, whether it's they pass your application to the hiring manager, get it through HR, whatever it is, you should be using your network. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about too, especially for those of you who are looking for an internship, or who get to a point later in the spring where you are hoping to find a full-time job, you don't find one yet. Kind of creative things you can do to create your own internship. Usually these would be like, It's pretty hard at the entry level to create your own full-time position, but we'll talk about some strategies for creating your own internship, which is something you might want to consider later on. So again, you should be doing all of these things and a combination of them. It's really important to get applications out the door. And if that means like you don't have a contact at a place and you're just submitting it, you should be doing it. So I said, first thing it's important to do is you should be looking online. And there are a lot of different places to look online, and you can be strategic about this. So first, find industry-specific job boards. And if you don't know what those are, think about the industries you're interested in. And this is going to sound silly or obvious, but Google it. Try to find it. And we can point you towards some additional resources. Many of you said that you're interested in human rights and NGOs and government. And actually, Francesca, maybe you could drop into the chat the link to the SEPA career services fact sheets.
Sure, yeah.
For those industries in particular, SEPA, School of International Public Affairs, has these long lists of industries and basically industry-specific job boards and particular organizations to look at. It's one of the best resources out there, let alone at Columbia, but really on the internet. And then Francesca also just dropped in some other examples of what we mean when we say industry-specific job boards. And these are good to check daily. You can set up an alert if they have that capacity, but you should check these every day because new things will be added. Job aggregating websites. The biggest ones out there are Indeed. Idealist is great for nonprofit jobs, and then LinkedIn Jobs. And again, if anything that you can set up alerts, you should be doing that to kind of ease the burden of having to check daily. But when you're in the height of your job search, you should be checking those almost every day. Company websites, this I say check weekly because, positions aren't going to pop up all the time, but positions do pop up. I got, a job that I got once was like a dream organization. And I just kind of every couple months would kind of check the website, and lo and behold, one time I went there, there was a job that I could apply to. So always, keep up with your, checking that the company or organization you're most interested in. And finally, as a Columbia student, you have access to a couple of different databases. Currently, you have access to Lionshare, which is run on the Handshake platform. You should all have a profile there. And we are going to be launching at the end of January a platform called GSAS Connect. And you'll learn a lot about that over email from us in the coming weeks. But it's like the hub for our office. So you'll register for events there, schedule appointments, and there will also be a job and internship database that's just for GSAS graduate students. So that doesn't exist yet, but it will exist. And this is something to also check with some frequency, but probably not as frequently as those, those big job boards. But again, searching online, you should be checking multiple sources. That's kind of the theme here. Don't rely on only one place. I hear a lot of people saying they kind of only use LinkedIn or they only use Indeed, but make sure that you're joining that with these other sources as well. We've talked a little bit about LinkedIn, and as I mentioned, there's going to be a whole workshop on LinkedIn coming in the next couple of weeks. So I'm not going to go into it, but I just want to say a few ways of using LinkedIn more strategically. So first, you can, as I was saying on the last page, on the last slide, create saved job searches and receive emails or receive alerts on LinkedIn so that you don't have to be constantly checking, that you can save that search and get those updates. Another thing that I think is people don't always realize is joining groups on LinkedIn. And you can join tons of groups. You should be joining groups based on your university affiliation. So for all of you, there are two groups you should join. One is Columbia Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and then the other is the general Columbia University group. There are a couple of these Ivy League, so anybody who's in an Ivy League institution can join Ivy Life and Ivy League Jobs and Recruiting. Each of those has, I think, over 50,000 members, and those are focused on posting jobs. But then also find groups for what you're interested in. So if you're interested in human rights, find a group about that. If you're interested in sustainability, join the sustainability professionals group. If you're interested in finance, whatever it is, you should be joining those groups as well. And then you'll get access to jobs that are posted to that group, and you'll be able to network with people who are in that group as well. And finally, you can follow companies. And so again, pick your, the 20 organizations and companies that you're most interested in, and you should follow them, and then you'll see updates from them in their news feed. And this is great for a couple of reasons. One, obviously you'll know about jobs that they've posted, but also you'll get company news. So then if there's something you want to mention in a cover letter about a recent update from the company, or really it's fodder for interviews too, that you can really be up to date and impress someone during an interview by saying, I saw that you have, this thing going on. And that's really impressive in a job interview. So those are just some top tips for using LinkedIn in an active way, other than just having an updated profile, reaching out to people, and applying for jobs. You should be saving your job searches, joining groups, and following companies. So I'm going to pause for a moment and do a quick breakout room. And we can pick back up with the recording too.
Yep.
There we go, I think we are, great.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna talk about is networking. And again, this is like a broad overview. We'll be doing workshops on networking dedicated to this, but another thing that we get a lot of questions about and hesitancy. So I very intentionally titled this slide "Where to Find Your Network," because you have a network, and I think a lot of people think you really don't, but you have some place to start. And so for some of you, especially if you're from the US and you're searching for jobs in the US, you think about your comfortable connections. These are family and friends, your peers. So all of you have those, right? All of you have the other people in your program and alumni from your program. And that's kind of the thing that all of you have and all of you share in common. Those are people in your network, even if you don't really know them personally. Also former colleagues and employers. And another person or set of people that all of you have is you have an advisor, you have an MA program director, and you have your faculty. So these people are in your network. These people are there to support you. These are people you can involve in your job search or in your exploration. So these we call comfortable connections. So warm connections, these are people who you maybe don't know or haven't spoken to personally, but you have a common affinity, or so you share something in common with them. So this might be alumni. So this could be like when you're on LinkedIn and you see another alum from Columbia University, that person's a warm connection, even if you don't know them yet. And they're someone who you can easily reach out to. Somebody who's a member of your same professional association. So, when you're searching for a job, a strategic thing to do is to join things, join groups, join meetup groups, get student memberships to professional associations if you can. Put yourself out there so that you have as many affinities as possible. Another warm connection could be a guest speaker or an event participant. Again, something we're hearing from students is it's so hard to network right now because everything's online, everything's virtual, you can't do the normal things. But there are still events, there are still talks, and even if it's not the same, I would encourage you to go. Get on all the email lists you can around campus. There are tons of institutes and centers, and they host programming. And if you go hear a speaker, if you're there in the Zoom room, even if there are 100 people there, then you can reach out to that person afterward and say, I heard you talk, I attended this event, or you might learn something in the event. But still, there are still opportunities. It's true, it's not the same, but there still are those opportunities. Next, volunteer mentors. So this is like if you have the opportunity, if you're in a professional association or in some other groups, sometimes there are mentorship programs, and this is a great time to join those programs. And then finally, first and second degree LinkedIn connections. So a first degree connection is someone who's an actual connection. A second degree connection means that you share a connection in common. So if you're searching on LinkedIn and you see the little like second symbol, you can click on that and see, oh, that means we share someone, so I can get an introduction to that person from this person I'm already connected to. So the strategy here is just in thinking about and expanding your network is really, I think, in first of all, realizing that those comfortable connections are part of your network, and even peers, even people who are in the same position as you, can be helpful to talk to about your job search. You can share information. Like I saw Anna put, or you all have past lives and experiences too, and so your past might be what someone else hopes is their future. So you can really learn from each other and help each other in that way. And your warm connections too, again, it's like put yourself out there. When you're searching for a job, you're like, that's the time when you're putting yourself out there in whatever way you're comfortable with. If you're an extrovert and you want to do informational interviews and talk to people a lot, you can do that. If you're more of an introvert or just want to attend things and join things, that's what you should be doing now to find your network. Okay, I've mentioned this term informational interview several times, so now I'm going to unpack that and explain what it is. Raise your hand if you have done an informational interview before. Either your like actual hand or a hand symbol, as you prefer. Okay, so many of you, some of you have. An informational interview sounds intimidating, but it's really sometimes people call them a coffee chat. So it's a 20 to 30 minute conversation between a person who wants to investigate a career, who's researching, and a person working in that career. So in all of my advising with students, I always, Francesca and I are generalists. We have our own like things that we've done in our lives and that we know a lot about, but our knowledge is limited, and at a certain point, the best thing to do, and what the information you can find out online is also limited. At a certain point, the best thing to do is to talk to people, and sometimes it only takes a couple of really illuminating conversations to help unlock a career path. So that's what an informational interview is. It is you getting information from somebody who's out there in the world. The objectives of that conversation, it can have lots of objectives: exploration, understanding a job market, and learning what hiring managers are looking for. You read a one-page job description, but there's a whole lot behind that job description. So a very strategic thing to do if we're talking about job search strategies is to actually talk to somebody who has been a hiring manager in that industry to ask, what are you actually looking for? Like, I'm seeing this phrase in a job description. What does that mean? So someone you can talk to for that information. Also, learning from someone else's career path and experience. Some of you may know where you'd like to be in 5 or 10 years, but you're not quite sure how to get there. And so an informational interview with people who have done that path can help. And finally, they can help you gain confidence about your professional identity and talking about yourself. So this is it's almost like preparation for a real interview, even though these are much lower stakes conversations. That you can, you can pay very close attention to how the other person is talking about the field too, so that you can really prepare for those interviews and representing yourself. And so this is just kind of the basic content of what one of these conversations would look like. So first thing is you're leading the conversation. So you would extend the invitation, you would introduce yourself first, and then ask the person you're talking to introduce themselves, or they would probably introduce themselves. And then you start asking questions. And so, these are just some of the common ones, but you'll have your own, tell me more about your trajectory. What's the most rewarding part about your work? What's the most challenging? What does a day, I see the program associate title, but what does it actually mean on a day-to-day basis? And then what experience, skills, personality characteristics does your organization look for in new hires? The questions you ask would differ depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody who's 1 or 2 years out, that's one kind of conversation. If you're talking to somebody who's very experienced, that would be another kind of conversation. So pay close attention to your audience. And then again, strategy here, how can you make the most of these conversations? It's not only about what you learn but a few key questions to ask. So I always like what job search advice would you give to someone in my situation? So after you've talked to them for 20 minutes, they understand you a little bit better and they can advise you a little bit. And then finally, using that one person to expand your network. So do you have any other contacts you would be willing to connect me with? And that can really lead you to high quality contacts. So, if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, you never know, if you're going to hit it off or not, if they're going to be helpful. But if you have a really helpful conversation with someone, then you can use that person to say, like, can you connect me with someone else? And that's actually a great question to ask in a follow-up email. So 4 rules of informational interviewing. First rule, prepare like it's a job interview. So you want to go in highly prepared, both about the person by looking at their LinkedIn profile and about where they work. 2, send a thank you note within 24 hours. Always, always, always send a brief little thank you note. And you can ask that follow-up question so that you're starting that exchange, which is, can you introduce me? I learned so much from our conversation. Would you be able to introduce me to someone else? Next, and so again, this is the key thing that was on that timeline, follow up again in 6 to 8 weeks. You don't have to do this with absolutely everybody you do an informational interview with, but the people who are helpful, definitely, you want to set some kind of calendar reminder so that you follow up with them. Final rule, don't ask for a job. So this is for information, and it will get very awkward if you say, can you hire me? Or, do you have any, there are kind of tactful ways of saying, oh, it'd be great to know, in the future, if there are any positions, but you're not going to say, okay, we've had this conversation, now can you hire me? That's not appropriate to do during an informational interview. Okay, just a little bit more on another question we get is, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I do this? How do I actually, reach out to these people? Can I do that? Yes, so in the US, this is common practice. It's it is very appropriate, it's not inappropriate. Here's a sample email request for an informational interview. It should be very brief. You should begin by introducing yourself. I am a graduate student in this program at Columbia, how you found out about the person, and what, one other thing about why that you're interested in that career path. And then finally, you want to make your request very specific. Would you be willing to schedule an informational interview? 20 to 30 minutes, is usually the amount of time you want. And I always think it's important too to give a time frame and to say, so next week or the following week or sometime later this month. Basically, if you leave it totally open-ended, then people aren't as motivated to respond because they see it as something that doesn't have a deadline. But if you say, in the next few weeks, and try to be as open as possible and as flexible. So, do it on their schedule and their preferred medium. So you might want to say phone or Zoom, as they prefer. I highlighted, or I put this top part in red because this is kind of the bones of if you're on LinkedIn. So this is an email, where you can write an email of whatever length you want. But if you're on LinkedIn, you have a character limit. And if you're reaching out to somebody as a new connection on LinkedIn who you don't know, this is basically the information you want. Very short introduction. I would love to connect. Just make sure to tailor that connection request on LinkedIn. So that's why I put that in red. Okay, so before we, do you think we have time for a breakout, Francesca, or should we a quick, a 2-minute breakout, or should people just put in the chat who they might talk to?
I mean, I guess, yeah, maybe just in the chat for right now.
Okay, great.
To get a sense of where you'd like to, or who can you start reaching out to? Who's the first person in your mind after you know a little bit more about informational interviewing? Who might you go ahead now starting your job search? Who might you contact? You don't have to put the name. You can just say my professor or my father-in-law or anyone who you're going to maybe reach out to. And I would say, I'm doing some informational interviewing myself right now, and I'm planning on talking to someone who I just met at yesterday, Rachel and I were at a professional development series for career development people, and I met someone who has an interesting background, and I want to talk to them and learn a little bit about how they're using their degree in counseling psychology in the career development field. So that's who I would talk to.
Mm-hmm. Great. Oh, great. And Anna and Shane, you guys put this in the chat. So yeah, if you just want to share with others that like the kind of person you're interested in talking to, might give others ideas, also kind of helps hold you accountable once you've written it down. And then Francesca will share her screen and move into job search materials.
So here we go. I'm going to share, and okay, I think I'm just going to do a general share because that'll be easier for me. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Or at least, okay, great. And I'm going to, oh, no, share current slide. Excellent. All right, and I'm going to put myself here. Okay. All right, so perfecting the resume. So now we talked a little bit about strategy of making connections. But now here is the process of the actual applying. And so before we get into, here we go, some polls. So I just wanted to quickly, when we get into resumes, some information that I just want to kind of get a general sense from all of you is, what do you think is the most effective bullet point here? And how should information on your resume be presented? So just getting, oops, did I launch it? Okay. So it seems like no one has voted yet though. Oh, here we go. Yes, thank you.
I can't see the poll this time either. So
here it come. Yeah, they're coming in now. All right, so the first bullet point, we said worked on multiple projects with team members, or lead a team of 5 in developing websites for clients, or arranged catering, travel, and lodging for week-long 39-person academic workshop with 25% international participants. And I'm going to end the poll and share some results here. Great. And so, yes, that's right. The one that's the most detailed is the one that you're really going to want to put on your resume. The one that you really give a full sense of the work that you did, how many people, and a breakdown of maybe even the participants. So the most detailed is the type of bullet point that's most effective. And how should information be presented? And you're right, in reverse chronological order. So great. So I think, we have a good sense of what resume should look like in this audience, and I'm happy to hear that. And for those of you who maybe did not get it right, that's all right. We're all learning here. And so I just wanted to start with a bit of an introduction about the resume itself. This is from an HR manager that I've worked with in the past, and I really liked her statement that it's a resume and a cover letter are your marketing materials. They will get you through the door and help you land a dream job. Hiring managers or recruiters will only skim over your resume and cover letter for a few seconds. So it's really important that you take the time to perfect these documents. And I strongly suggest that you make an appointment with Rachel or me or any like a friend, a professor, to get further feedback on your documents, because it's so important to perfect these. And so let's just go quickly. What's the difference between a resume and a CV? Something I get all the time. So a resume, it's a concise, a 1 or 2 page document. I really have a preference for a 1-pager. However, if you have a lot of experience, maybe work experience, or you have a lot of research that you've done, or any publications, or really want to show more, you can do 2 pages. And so I'm starting to warm up to that idea that you can definitely have a 2-page resume that's still really effective. It's a summary of your skills and your experience, so it's not everything, and it's best for applying to most industry positions. While a CV is really a comprehensive description of your academic and professional credentials, it's more likely to be used for academic or research positions, and it's a really more extensive listing of your work experiences. So maybe everything. If I was going to have a CV, I'd have like my first position in 2008. So all your publications, all maybe your teaching experiences, and it can be multiple pages, so more than 2. And so what should the resume include? And I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because it seems like a lot of you kind of familiar with this process. So of course you want to have contact information. So that would include, the name, street address, email address. Make sure it's a professional email address. Something that's maybe using your name and it's not like, Snickers bar 44 at hotmail.com. And then, include a link to your personal website or LinkedIn page. And if you don't want to include your full address, you can just list the zip code. I understand some privacy issues. So that's one way to kind of get around that. And of course, you want to have your education. Undergraduate degrees and above, though, do not include high school. Most employers don't really want to know about your high school experience at this point if you have an advanced degree, such as an MA. And make sure that you list the dates of attendance and the location of an institution, because that can be helpful to the reader. So of course, you also want to include your experience. And so I think often when we talk to students, they're like, does it only have to be paid? No, it can be unpaid work. It can be internships. It can be volunteer experiences, anything that might be relevant to the job. And then make sure you include the organization name, the location, the dates of employment, and your title. Again, those are so important. And then you want to, underneath that kind of header, you want to have a brief description of your accomplishments in bullet points, each one starting with an action verb. So both educational experience and your work experience should be listed in reverse chronological order, as most of you know. And so I just quickly in the chat, I'm interested to know, does anyone have a favorite action verb? And I would have to say, I really love like anything that's like, developed or initiated, or words that kind of show that maybe you're overseeing an entire project. We have collaborated. Yeah, that's a great one. Spearheaded. Ooh, Rachel, I like that one. Anyone else have maybe a favorite action verb that you'd like to share with the group? And in, I don't know, Rachel, if you want to maybe drop a chat into the CCE guide, Design Your Next Steps, they have an entire list of action verbs. If you really want to get fancy, the thing is you don't want to repeat yourself and use the same action verb again and again. Oops. So let's talk about creating these strong resume statements with impact. As we all know, the one that has the most information and the most detailed is often the most impactful. So how do you go about creating a resume statement or a bullet point with impact? So there's this situation called the STAR method, or this method. And so it's really to assist you with trying to be as specific as possible with talking about the roles that you've had on a resume. So of course, STAR, it stands for situation. What situation or problem or conflict were you facing? And then the T in this is task. What task did you identify in response to the problem or the situation? What action did you take? And that's where you start with your action verb. And then what was the result? Can it be quantified? And if not, I liked how the example that I gave you, the bullet point said, kind of gave me a really detailed example of the breakdown of maybe even the people that they were dealing with. They said, 95% international, right? So quantifying and being result oriented is also really effective with a bullet point. So try to be, again, as specific as possible. So I want to show you the difference here. What's the difference really between a generic description? So this would be like just responsible for events and panels. And so I don't really have an understanding of like what types of events and panels and what skills were used. So I really, you missed the chance to showcase relevant skills that you use to carry out this task. And so a more specific one is plan and coordinate panels on public health for audiences of 25 to 50 undergraduates on a bi-monthly basis. So I know how many people, the audience, and how often. Ooh, getting ahead of myself here. Identify and contact health professionals in the community to participate in panels. So you're acting as a liaison between your organization and those in the community. And that's a really important skill to highlight. And then of course, create marketing materials and publicize events through social media. In this one up here, I had no idea that they were even doing anything in social media. Just showing here the difference. Okay, so what should it also include? As I said, volunteer and leadership experience, any other skills you might have. So do include, anything from computer and technical skills and research skills. And then of course your languages. I know, again, we have a large international population. Highlight that. Show that you speak both English and, any other language. And make sure that you do include your proficiency levels. I think that that's, again, helpful for an employer to know where you are within that language development. Don't put a language on your resume if you feel rusty about it. I have been in an interview and asked to conjugate a verb in Italian because I had Italian on my resume. And luckily I could do it, but I was like, maybe I should take it off if I'm not going to practice the language. So just keep that in mind, that you better be ready to talk about your resume. So make sure the information on there is relevant and up to date. Okay, so these are some optional sections: a profile or a summary, honors, and publications. And I like a profile or a summary, particularly I think in this world where maybe cover letters might not be required anymore. And so a summary is a really nice way to show kind of your qualifications, or if you're a career changer. So again, like myself, I used to work in arts administration, and then I moved into higher education and career development. And so a profile could be really helpful on a resume like mine, where you might see that I have a degree in art history, and kind of explain to the employer why I might be a better fit for your organization, even though I'm trying to move into a new industry. So I wanted to just highlight this, a resume summary. And as I said, it's particularly if you have an eclectic background or several years of experience or changing careers. And really, it's just a brief snapshot of your highlights, your skills, your experience, your accomplishments. It's a couple of sentences. And I'll show you a resume in a little bit that has a summary that I think is quite nice. It connects your background with the current position or field. As I said, it's short, approximately 2 to 5 phrases. And here's some possible section headers you can use: a career profile, career highlights, things like that. And it's not necessary if you're a current student or a recent graduate with a background that directly connects with your target industry. Maybe you don't include it. So it's really up to you. This is optional. What not to include? Again, these are pretty basic, but you don't want to. So for maybe though, international students, like sometimes it's actually required in certain countries to include a picture, or maybe your age. In the United States, that is not something that we do. So make sure that to remove that information from your resume. I think objective statements are really not necessary. So like seeking a position in the finance industry, just use your cover letter to show that. And then make sure you're not repeating words. So again, responsibilities, duties, responsible for, that just gets so boring for a reader. So make sure that you're kind of keeping it snappy and exciting. I'd say don't use full sentences in your descriptors of your application materials. Again, as Julia said at the start of my slides, is that people are only going to be spending a couple of minutes looking over your resume. So a bullet point is a great way to kind of get that point across. And then references. Unless they are asked for in the job description, don't include them because it takes up some space. And you can usually just say references available upon request. And then that way you can prepare a separate document with this information. And you have control over the process of usually when someone's asking for references, that's because you're really close to getting a job. And so you usually want to warn your reference that they might be getting a call from someone, and maybe send them the job description, send them your resume in advance so that they are prepared to talk about you and your skills. Oh, and of course, do not have any typos or spelling errors or grammatical errors that can really take you out of the running. So that's why you need to have as many people read your document as possible. I was missing the S on Saratoga Springs on my resume because I went to school at Skidmore College, my undergraduate degree, and I got that called out in an interview, and it was so embarrassing. So do make sure that you double check. All right, so common mistakes, we'll move through this. Don't oversell yourself. Just be truthful about your abilities. Not putting the most important information first. So, if the job requires many years of work experience and you have it, maybe you start with work experience rather than education. So think about that. And then older relevant experience, again, it should just be a snapshot of your best and most recent. And don't give too much information. Crowding your resume with too much text and information just really discourages people from reading it. That's the first thing I always do when I'm reviewing a student resume. I zoom out and say, do I even want to read this? And if you're using bold and underline and italics, that's a nice way to kind of organize your information in a way that will help people view it and read it in a way that's not overwhelming. And so don't use abbreviations or technical words that might be really specific to your industry. Although I do have to say that often when I'm talking to financial students who are interested in the financial field, they do use jargon that I might not be familiar with, but often the hiring managers are. So do check with someone who works in the industry you're interested in to also read your resume. And so a pro tip, as I said, let's tailor your resume for each position. Use keywords and phrases from the job description that will make your resume stand out, and you'll be more likely to get an interview that way. So how do you tailor a resume? That's a great question. So review the job description, highlight keywords and required skills. And so this is what I do. I print out a job description and I actually go ahead and highlight it. Or you could just use the highlighting tool in PDF or anything, but you should really be studying it. All of you are kind of in your master's program. I'm sure you've done some research. You're kind of like researching the job description before you actually sit down and write your resume or change your resume and your cover letter to fit the job description. So again, make sure you spend some time reflecting on your experiences and how you can prove to the reader that you have the skills required. Use keywords in your bullet points. Can you arrange the sections to better fit the description? As I said, if skills are really important for a position, sometimes I often see students start with like education, then skills, then work experience. So if that's the case, if like skills seem super important, such as like a specific computer program, or maybe using, some kind of very advanced software, maybe your skills goes next. Okay, then sit down and write. Is it helpful to create it is helpful to create a resume template, but then it should be changing according to the job description. And then if you're applying to positions in a few different fields, you might want to create different versions of your resume to fit those fields. So if you're interested in government work, then maybe you create one that's also for government. And then maybe you're also thinking about cultural institutions as another industry. So you create a resume that focuses maybe more on some a volunteer experience you had in a cultural institution, or maybe some other research that you maybe done. So think about different versions of a resume that could fit to that industry. And then have a friend or a parent or a career advisor review that resume. And I think it's always good to share the job description with the person reviewing it so that they can get some background about what they should be looking for. And then they can give you some really helpful feedback on those documents to say, does it fit? Okay, so I do want to just actually take a pause and just like look at a sample resume that I have here up. And so this is actually for the publishing industry. And as you can see here, I just wanted to show quickly this summary. And then, talk a little bit about tailoring. And so the summary says, I'm a graduate student studying modern transatlantic and European diplomatic history with a regional specialization in Central and Eastern Europe, over 3 years of combined for professional experiencing in publishing, research assistance, and project management, and office administration, including event planning and social media outreach, committed to a career in serious nonfiction publishing as a means to support the dissemination of scholarly research with a social mission. And so this was the summary that the student created in response to this position at the Council on Foreign Affairs for a staff editor of Foreign Affairs. And so it was really important in this job description to show that you're someone who's really dedicated to kind of working on pieces that generate story ideas, assisting with other publication tasks, and kind of, like Foreign Affairs is a, pretty hard-hitting journal. So you'd want to show that you're really devoted to kind of their mission as well. And so I think that the student really took into consideration the job description itself and went ahead and kind of added that into both, the summary as well as the bullet points that they included. And so this student, this is an actual student. I just changed some of the information on the resume to de-identify it. But as you can see here, really nice use of, as I said, kind of zooming out here. If I can, hold on, I just have to move this up here. Yeah. And then as you can see, kind of zooming out, is it easy to read? There's a lot of information here, but I can quickly see the student's education, professional experience, publications, skills and languages, where they've worked is the first thing that I see. And I think that, it's really has a great clear outline. And so kind of, and of course it considers the job description. So I'm going to go back here and from current slide. So writing a strong cover letter, so important. However, I do want to also launch a poll here now on, oh, did I share those results? Stop sharing. Okay, so I want to go now to cover letters and I'm going to launch a poll. Are cover letters an important part of your application is the first question. And then what is the purpose of a cover letter? And that's a multiple choice one, so choose as many as you'd like. And, just to get a sense of what your thinking is with cover letters. Okay, results are coming in. And we're at 83% voted, so I'm going to end the polling. Sorry if you didn't get to it. I'm going to share these results, though. I love this. Yes. Yeah. I hear sometimes people are like, no. we got one no. And then sometimes. So this is the thing. I get asked this question all the time. And I think, yes, they are overall very important. It just depends on who's going to be reading that document. Sometimes I know I've talked to hiring managers who say, I always read a cover letter. It gives me a really great sense of who the person is and their experience. And I have people who say, no, I never read that cover letter. And so, it really depends on who's reading your application, and you never know who it will be and their approach. So do make sure that your document is really strong. And then what's the purpose of a cover letter? And so the most people said to show an employer how you write and think, but really all of these answers make sense and are applicable. So to tell the employer more about you and your interests, it tells the employer about soft skills, and it also tells the employer why you want to work with their company, as well as how you write and how you think. All right, so moving forward with, what does Julia say about this? So she says she likes to call cover letters the gateway to getting an interview because it's your unique story. It tells your narrative. So just make sure that you are genuine, honest, and stay away from cliches like team player. Instead, talk about situations where you prove to be all those things. So if you've ever taken a writing class, I'm sure you've heard show, don't tell. So anyone can say is, I'm a great collaborator. But if you back it up with an experience, that's where you really succeed in saying, I'm a great collaborator. For example, I had to do a group project and maybe you talk about that. So you always want to show examples. So again, before you start writing, tailor, right? So think about, research the employer, learn about the organization, read their website, use even their social media accounts and learn about them and say, what experiences might you have that fit the kind of the mission of the employer? Also think about if you can find a specific contact, always address your cover letter to that specific person. And if you can't, I think that, usually I use the term like dear company staff or dear staff members, because it's a little more like personalized instead of like dear hiring manager or to whom it may concern is pretty formal. And then analyze that job description. So identify necessary skills and qualifications and make a list of keywords. And then analyze your background. So like ask yourself, like, what have you done that's similar to the duties required of a job? And it doesn't only have to be work experience. It could be your educational experiences, your projects, maybe any internships you've had, maybe any volunteer opportunities. So please do analyze your background before you sit down. So the introduction, okay, really it's what position are you applying to? So there's a really like I should say that there's a very strict kind of method of writing a cover letter that I think students often say, where do I start? And so I want to just break it down by like sections. So the introduction. So what position are you applying to? Where you found the job, the name of the contact or company. If you have any connections, you put that right up in that first paragraph in the introduction. And then a short summary, maybe your education, your years of experience, and then express interest in working for the company. So just to kind of go back to this, I have a cover letter for the same job at Foreign Affairs written by the same student. And so this is long, okay? This is a big cover letter. And so it's because it's for a writing position. So it makes sense that it's pretty long and lengthy. Your cover letter doesn't need to be so long and lengthy, but I do think that it's really nice to have to show the different types of cover letters that are out there. So this student really went for it. And they kind of name drop right in the beginning, and they talk about how they went to a recent, right here, they say the position that they're applying to, staff editor, and they write to someone specific on this editorial staff. So they went to their website, and the student did a little bit of research of who's the head editor, and they found that person and they wrote to them. So doing a little bit of reconnaissance work or doing a little bit of research on a website is great. And so he said, he at a recent talk at Columbia University, he was really struck by how this person, Justin Vaught, was like, talking about foreign affairs and how he wants to make scholarly work accessible to everyone. And that's why he was really impressed by that and wanted to apply to foreign affairs. And he said, I've chosen a serious to write nonfiction editorial work, and I can think of no better way to support a common pursuit of a better future while leveraging my experiences as an editor, scholar, and writer than by working with the great editorial team at Foreign Affairs. So it is a kind of an example of why he wants to work with the company. And this is a less traditional cover letter. I'm going to be honest with you. It's kind of not maybe following that format of like, dear so-and-so, I'm writing to apply to position, but I still think it's really effective. And so, yes, there's maybe a very strict way of writing a cover letter, which is he's introducing himself. He's talking about why he wants to apply to the company, but it doesn't follow maybe that straight ahead format. And so there is some room for creativity. But I think that you do want to follow a specific format. And then there's the body paragraph. So let's go back to my presentation though. So the body paragraphs highlight your experiences, your qualifications that are relevant to the position, cite specific examples of when you use those particular skills or programs, and try to organize your paragraphs around one or two experiences or around specific skills. And then communicate to the employer how valuable you would be. And really, the cover letter is a place to highlight your soft skills, such as communication, leadership, right? Again, kind of going back to this student. So let's look at the qualifications: 1 year of professional experience, familiarity with online and print journalism, exceptional writing and editing skills. So, you really want to make sure that you're hitting on these as well as the responsibilities. So verify facts. Confer with authors. So these are some things work collegially, fact checkers and everyone. So let's take a look now back at the student's example. So again, as my resume reflects, I'm currently an editorial intern. So he focuses his first paragraph around work experiences. And then the second paragraph is about his educational experience. And he uses keywords like, my role has allowed me to practice time management, project organizational skills, specifically in a fast-paced publishing environment. As both a master's student and an intern, I have to effectively balance time between various pressing projects. So he tells me how he actually uses those skills. He shows me, right? And then how he uses advanced calendar operations. He's also has an understanding of web publication and covering political and social events. And he, has to, alongside my editorial work, I initiated and authored a weekly paid premium newsletter. So, he kind of speaks about his work experience here in relation to the job. And then he talks about his academic training. So how is that, again, going to make him a great fit? So my academic training experience would also contribute significantly to my work. I trained in political science and international relations as an undergraduate student, and now I'm working towards a diplomatic historian at Columbia University, where I focus specifically on modern Eastern European and transatlantic relations. Training in these fields has exposed me to a wide array of academic debates and disciplines. So this has really developed his writing and his skills, which will aid me with my work at foreign affairs. Always bring it back to them. So I have all these skills, how's it going to benefit you? And then finally, I love this, how he kind of ends with like a little bit about him. I get a sense of him. So I find that one of the best strategies for efficiently handling multiple pressing deadlines is to cultivate a collegial and supportive workplace. As any of my previous or current employers would attest to, I always bring a positive spirit to my work, helping not just myself, but those around me to perform at the highest level while enjoying a few laughs together along the way. So you don't have to be so stodgy and stiff. You can talk a little bit about you and how you approach your work, okay? And I love this. And so I think, show your personality. And then let's go back here to current slide. And so we're going to say the conclusion. So really thank the reader for their time and consideration, reaffirm your interest in the position, reemphasize why you want to work there and why you're a good fit, and then offer your contact information. And so, another thing, just kind of going back to this, is like, look how nice he has the same header on both his resume and the cover letter. He has his contact information. It all looks like it's from the same person. It's all the same font. That's something also to consider in terms of tailoring your documents. You want to see it's all from one person, and it looks so nice. All right, I think, we looked at our samples, and so I'm going to head it back over. Rachel, would you like me to just advance the slides for you so you don't have to share your screen?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. So here we are. I'll let you take it over now about talking about making your own internship from a cover letter.
Great. Yeah. So I promised that we would come back to this because I said the slide that had the multi-pronged approach to job searching, that the last prong was being creative about potentially creating your own opportunities. And so for this, you can use all of that great advice that Francesca gave about a cover letter and tweak the letter to offer yourself and your skills and experience as an intern. And so here, what this is about is if an organization does not have an internship available, but it's like a dream organization, a place you'd love to work, that you think you have a lot to contribute to and a lot to learn from, it doesn't mean that door is completely closed. And the time to do this is more, I would say, you can, the time to actually like offer yourself and your services for an internship would more be like later in the spring. If you find yourself without something and you just really want to gain experience, that would be the time to do this. Because if you see that there's nothing there now, the thing to do would be to try to, network and do some informational interviews. And you can find out if they'll be posting internships. But if it gets to be later in the spring, then you could consider this approach. It's not at all a requirement, but it's just something to consider that a lot of times students don't consider. So if you're writing this letter, most of the same advice applies with a couple of subtle differences. So first, you do want to be as explicit as possible. So you want to acknowledge that there's no internship advertised. So you're not saying I'm writing to apply for X internship, but say like, I understand that I see that you don't have any positions available, but then say what you would like to offer. And so it's good to be explicit and specific. So if you can reach out directly to a hiring manager, someone who you think you'd want to work with, like that actual person, and offer what kind of work you can do and would like to do. So offer a project, or say, a lot of you said you're interested in like NGOs or human rights, and say like, I'm, very interested in, have a lot of experience, and I've been, studying this issue in human rights. I see that you're working on, you have a program about this, or that you're doing research about this. I would love to offer to help. And then what becomes really important too in this cover letter, you want to do it in every cover letter, but show that you're really, interested and knowledgeable in the organization. And as I said, you'd want to try to direct this email to the actual hiring manager. So you wouldn't send this, like if you send this to someone in HR, they're not going to know, like they're not as familiar with the actual kind of work that's going on. They know